We are live, Outlast the Iron, episode 4. These are your hosts, Alex Feinberg.
I'm Zach Homol. What's up, everybody? Welcome back.
Can't be better today. In Idaho right now, it's sunny outside, probably about 70 degrees. It's also my dad's 70th birthday, so that's big ups to Seth if you're out there listening, though I don't even think my dad even knows we're doing this podcast, but, got to throw it out there.
I wonder if there's a lot of 70-year-olds who do listen to podcasts.
I'm not sure. If he's listening to podcasts, they're from like mainstream outlets that have long lost their credibility in my eyes. Things that would be.
Yeah.
This is something that this is something that parents do, right? They get, and this might even feed into what we mentioned we would talk about in our last episode or last time, episode 3, we got off talking about how negative emotions can lead into mindsets, can lead into identities. And I think, definitely what we're seeing happen now in the political and media space is people's identities are becoming wrapped up in which media they consume, which politician they support, which ideology they believe in, to the point where many people are increasingly incapable of dealing with logic and actually observable events in their lives and making meaningful improvement in their lives because they're so wrapped up in I am this. I'm a victim. I'm a survivor. I'm a this, I'm a that. And these mindsets are certainly helpful. There's a reason why people develop them when they have them, but oftentimes people hang on to these identities far past their shelf life, far past their meaningful use case. What do you think about that, Zach?
I think it's true too. I find that, it was interesting. I was in some conversations the other day with some friends and family, and this is the first time that I was around these particular individuals while this whole coronavirus started happening. And I knew within about 3 minutes into the conversation that we were on completely different ends of the spectrum whenever they said that they were getting ready to travel. But before they wanted to travel, they're like, we're just going to wait till the vaccine comes out. And I was just like, I just paused, and I wasn't really talking much anyways. I was just really listening. And when I get in these particular environments, I like to observe and then to utilize the information on podcasts like this or for tweets, and just to kind of see how, because I realize this too, man. People have if they're far left, I'm not going to bring them to the right. And if they're far right, I'm not going to bring them to the left. Right. So that's why maybe if you were to label me, like on some things, I feel like I swing a little more to the right. On other things, I think I swing a little bit more to the left, but I have no real political stance on any of this shit. I don't vote for none of these fucking yahoos.
Because neither of us have ever voted. We've been eligible to vote for, I would say, 25 different elections between the two of us. If I'm estimating that correctly, we're 0 for 25 collectively.
Yeah, and my life is still excellent, and I have a lot because I control what I can, right? So, anyways, when I realized that they were talking about the vaccine, I realized that we were completely in different ends of the spectrum, and they asked me, well, Zach, what are you gonna do for the gym? Like, you gotta provide face masks, and you gotta do this, and you gotta do this. And I said, yeah, man, I don't know. And they're like, what do you mean you don't know? I was like, I don't know. I'm playing everything, day by day. But I do know that I'm not going to infringe on anybody's rights. It's something I do know. Just because you're choosing to, wear face masks or do whatever it is, I'm not going to make anybody else choose to do whatever particular that looks like. And that gets into things like, well, what's the Board of Health going to do? And what's this? And, there's a lot of like questions that I don't have answers for. And so I don't even ponder the thoughts because it doesn't do anything productive for me. I'll handle that as that time comes. But these exact people, I felt like I was watching a CNN news channel outlet. They were just regurgitating the exact information that CNN was spitting out. And the reason I do know this is because I watch the snippets and I watch how people respond. I go watch the other side and I watch the snippets and I watch how people respond. And I just was viewing the terminology that they were using and also the way they were saying it. They were very anxious in their verbiage. And I could feel that, a lot of people is right now, identity is COVID-19. That's what they're known for. That's what they post about. That's what they talk about. And that's how they live their life, within fear of the potential of what the virus could do to them or people they love. But I do find it interesting, and I have mentioned this, and Ash says I'm a little bit too aggressive with it sometimes, which makes sense coming from me. I know you all see me on positive all the time. Yo, what's up? But I'm also the first one to say fuck you and punch you in the throat. The whole thing, though, what was I about to say? I'm too aggressive with something.
I don't know, maybe pushing out negativity from people who you feel are regurgitating points that they heard on the news. They carry with them an element of anxiety, from being constantly in someone else's web of fear that's used to control them and attract their eyeballs and keep them coming back. I don't know if that's...
I forget where it was. I was even going with that, lost the thought, but I do know this too. I'm very like, when I have a point that I'm trying to make, I can be sometimes aggressive with my responses. And I realize that people don't accept that type of response, right? People tend to clam up whenever I have a more aggressive approach, but it's harder for me to refine from having an aggressive approach when people are so single track minded, that if I go to, well, this is my perspective on maybe what a different way to see, me and you have such great conversations because we're open to anything. We're open to hearing about what it might look like and what the experience might be. Where when people are, very close minded and I go to share a point of view, and they're, here's a good example. There's a friend of us who's going to see his grandma randomly, or not his grandma, his family, his parents, right? And their grandma lives with them, who's 80. And he's like, well, I'm not worried about getting the virus and like what it'll do to me, but I'm worried about like my grandma. And I go, well, if he was worried about her, why are you going to see your mom all the time? He said, well, my Nana's not, I don't see her though. Like she's not around. I go, but you see your mom.
Right.
And she goes, you mean to tell me your mom and her don't cross paths? Because I know they do. And he's like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess I really didn't think about it that way. But this is coming from someone who is extremely biased and far left and so worried and fear driven about what's going on. But then again, the only reason they don't want to get it because they don't want to pass to their grandma, but they're still making their grandma susceptible to the virus. So I'm like, you're choosing, and this is what I get angry when people choose their biases. Like they're choosing what they're being biased about with this whole entire COVID-19. It's just like, here's another thing, the face mask, right? So the face mask, like if you're not taking it off, and this is just some quick education for y'all. Like if you're not taking it off behind your ears and setting it down and washing it immediately or covering it with a towel, like every time you adjust like this, and I see it a million times when I'm driving down the road, people are adjusting and like their hands are touching their fucking face and under the face mask all the time. I'm like, you do know that it's not working then. You look fucking retarded. And you do, like, if you don't understand how to properly use the protection, why are you using it? Are you using it for what particular reason? Because you're afraid, and that's why you're using it.
So I have a hypothesis on this. I think the world can broadly be split into people who believe things will be okay if they just do what they're told, and people who don't believe that at all. And I think our life experiences dictate why we're in the respective buckets that we are in. And I think the common life experiences of other people dictate why they're in the buckets that they're in. So for most people who grow up in, let's just say, healthy households where food is readily available on the table, and their parents are holding down steady jobs, they have more of a stable foundation upon which they can build their lives. And when you have a stable foundation upon which you can build your life, when you're a subordinate individual as a child, you will tend to get good things from listening to authority and doing what you're told. And you will continue to be rewarded during your educational career by doing what the teacher tells you to. And everybody in your community, because it's probably a reasonable community, will respect you for getting good grades and getting into a good university. And you'll get congratulated for choosing a desirable major and graduating from college with a high GPA. And then you'll get a job, and you'll get good reviews by your manager from being obedient and doing what you're told. And it's really hard for people to go from one environment where they're constantly getting, essentially dopamine as encouragement for following a particular path. It's really hard for them to realize that that path has a downside. And when other voices chime in and say, well, no, have you considered this? Have you considered that? Have you considered this? It's really disruptive to them. It's almost like if you go to a cult and you're like, hey guys, that comet came and it didn't happen as your leader said it would, what do you think about that? Most of them will just attack you for being the messenger of logic and empirical reality. because it disrupts that like emotional comfort that they have believing that they can get what they want out of life, doing what they're told. And I think, you know, obviously with your family background and with your work background, it's very clear that, you know, from a young age, you realized that things weren't going to go your way if all you did was what you were told. And it's also very indicative of risk-seeking mindsets versus passive mindsets, where risk seekers will say, this is how I'm going to live, and let me figure out a way to do it. Where passive people are going to say, how can I avoid being hurt? Where risk-seeking people know they're going to get hurt. Like, you know, you're going to scrape your elbows. You know, with Iron Valley Barbell, not every month is going to be the best month ever. Like, these bad things are going to happen, and there's nothing you can do to avoid occasional hiccups. But for people who've grown in more steady state, stable environments, they almost falsely believe that, well, they can just continue that in perpetuity.
Yeah, we're preconditioned for this. We're preconditioned to avoid the knee scrapes.
Yeah, and the
100%.
reality is, if you try to avoid knee scrapes, you'll never do anything interesting. Like, you need to have a mindset that absorbs knee scrapes, that says, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And if my knees are going to get scraped, that's fine. You know, maybe I don't want to tear my ACL, but my knees will get scraped. Like, there will be.
I think people just miss the note of realizing that suffering is inevitable. No matter what we do, no matter what field we go into or what our lifestyle is, we're still going to suffer. So those who avoid these scrapes and they have the white suburban house and then are in the neighborhood with the average house of being $500,000 to $1 million home, and you know, they find themselves in these environments, like, your suffering is still inevitably happening. Yeah. Monotony. Keeping up with the Joneses, making sure you have to make those pay every month. You have to make sure you have to pay out this much money and to maintain this specific lifestyle. You know, we're so blinded. We're so blinded to normalcy, toxic normalcy.
Yeah.
Completely blinded to it. People have no idea how toxic it is for everyone. We're humans. We're such complex, different creatures. Why are we all, for the majority, living the same way, doing the same things? It's because it's preconditioned. We're taught this. We are conditioned through this throughout middle school, throughout high school, throughout college. As Alex and I have chatted about before, we chatted before, Alex, about this precondition of fitting a system. That in itself is insanity.
Yeah, and it is, and it's all. And I look at my own cognitive adjustments over the last 15 years, where when I was in college and even early in my working career, I thought that if I was simply the best at everything that was put in front of me, life would be fine. And if I worked harder than everybody, then why would I not be the best? You know, that hypothesis was challenged when I did not make it into the major leagues. And then I ended up having a regular, quasi-regular desk job, classifiably regular desk job, though it was not regular. And you know, and as I got deeper and deeper into, you know, corporate America life, I came to realize that a lot of what was going to be expected out of you in many ways, not just as an employee, but as an American consumer, is actually impossible. Like, if you think about what, you know, maybe the government or different mentors or you know, different influence leaders in our society expect you to do, it's like they expect you to be obedient, take care of everything, you know, be a good corporate employee, be a good husband, be a good father, be this, be that, drive this nice truck, own this nice house. And it's like, okay, so if you actually do all of these things, your income, if you're incredibly obedient and have reasonable intelligence, you know, your income will probably grow to about $250,000 a year, I would guess. But all of the things that you're told you need to have on TV cost more than that. Like, because there's actually no limit to the amount of things that you're told you need. And so you might think, well, $250,000, like my truck and my house, like my this, it doesn't stop there. Like, you're going to need to send your kids to the right private school because all the people in your social circle are sending their kids to the private school. They'll judge each other off of other things. You know, when you find out that you're getting into new social circles, you'll find that there are even newer mechanisms for ranking people socially. And so this is one thing that I you know, fight with all of these people who are fighting for equality. We just want equality. We just want to end this ism and that this ism. It's like, yeah, we could do that. I think that's great. And obviously, if there's like if there's, serious inequality issues, those should certainly be addressed. But at the end of the day, we as humans will never have equality, because the human brain does not seek equality. The human brain seeks inequality. The human brain wants to find a reason to feel superior to others. And so even if we were all the same color, even if we, for whatever reason, stopped believing in like sex and gender, and we were basically like indistinguishable from one another in the year 2030, by the year 2040, different brands will figure out how to make people feel superior for owning their products. And then they'll have new social groups formed around new hierarchies, and you're in the same rat race over and over again. So this is really a game of the human condition, and how many people within our society are being manipulated by the fact that they, just like us, are under the human condition.
Trying to create inequality in itself is inequality.
So let's go deeper on that. I'm not sure I follow.
Trying to create, right? So trying to equal quality, right? Everyone's equal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to make that in itself is inequality. It's impossible. It in itself is impossible. You are trying to then limit people from what their perspectives are of the world, or what they believe. Now, I do believe in certain things that if you can visually see wealth gap, whatever it certain is, but you also need to recognize that if you're not good at baseball, you're not a professional athlete. If you're not good at your job, you shouldn't get paid more for it, and someone else get paid less. A man shouldn't get paid less than a woman shouldn't get paid more than a man in a CEO position just because she's a woman. She should be paid equal. She should be paid exactly what she's worth. Should he be paid more because he's a man? No, he should be paid exactly what he's worth. But trying to say that he needs to make less money because she makes less money is in itself wrong.
Well, and it's interesting. If you really want to figure out where people are coming from with their positions, you need to get into these nuances like that. And so I think maybe 15 years ago, what Zach said would be considered very normal. And this is actually what a lot of people on the left would agree with. It's like, yeah, you should get paid what you're worth. There's no reason to pay someone more or less based on the gender that they are or the sex that they are. But I think what happens with a lot of both medical, political, just ideologies is the groups that have a lot of momentum and the groups that have a lot of power will end up influencing the narrative around what they put out. And so for groups that have coalitions supporting them and groups that have political power, they will be able to redefine what fair is. Everybody wants to redefine what fair is to make it everybody else doing stuff for me, because that's the fairest. Right. And so society is basically a group of individuals with many different groups who are all trying to essentially get more than the others. And sometimes there's cooperation and sometimes there's conflict. And everybody realizes that if they can position themselves as deserving for other people to do things for them and for other people to give them the benefit of the doubt, they're going to get an advantage. And so you'll constantly see PR departments doing this. I mean, you saw all these executives going in front of Congress over the last few weeks, explaining why they needed money, after using all the money that they borrowed to buy their own stock to pay themselves. It's like, well, then they'll figure out some excuse for why nobody could have foreseen this happening, and that we as a society are, have an obligation to keep, us alive. And yeah, but let's not talk about how rich we're going to be when you do this. But, obviously we're all in this together, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, this is just a game that everybody's playing. Everybody's always trying to get an inch here and there. And if I can get Zach to pay for my lunch, by convincing him that, that's just the fairest thing to do because of all this privilege that he has, like, why would I not try to do that? Like, let me see, especially if it's effective, and this happens society wide.
Because you have values. That's why you wouldn't do it. Because you have values, because you're a man of integrity. These things, and they're gone. It's like, these are things that are not being taught anymore. When this whole climbing the corporate ladder and playing the game, we hear this terminology all the time. And this is why I'm not a part of it. And this is why I'm not a part of these things in the world. You asked me the other day about my personal development and how did it lead with finding God. It all led together, known as like the game that everyone's trying to play. And I view them and I view how they like I view their life, and I don't look at the money they make, but how they communicate with me. And are they carrying anxious energy? Are they stressed? And if I see that all these corporate guys or all these big entrepreneurs or whatever it is, they're all wearing the same fucking stress and all this same anxious energy, it's like, I don't want this for myself. This is not what I believe is designed for me. I don't feel well. I don't feel healthy when I have those feelings.
Right. And what's crazy is I tweeted about this a few months ago. And, I said, when you're new to a job, look at the health markers of the people in senior positions around you, because that is going to be a very strong indicator of what's expected of you if you were to rise within that organization. And I noticed this in some groups that I was in at Google, where some of the leaders were great people. They're all like really friendly people. You trust them to take care of your kids. You want to have them over for dinner. They tend to be, fun to talk to. They are good people by and large. But you look at their health markers, the further you go up north, and it's like, you guys are not taking care of your bodies. And they're not in the way that many Americans would. They're not 30 pounds, 50 pounds overweight. They're actually underweight. And you look at them and you're like, you should probably gain 20 pounds. Like, you don't look like you're eating. You look like you're stressed out, and you're making high 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures a year, but you only have one body. And like, why are you allowing your body to depreciate like this? And I think a lot of it is they're part of someone else's big picture. They're being made to feel important by somebody else. Their community that they grew up with looks up to them and says, so-and-so is a director at Google, so-and-so is a VP at Google, so-and-so is an SVP at Google. And their whole identity is built up around being this tech guru. And they probably fear losing that identity. They probably fear quitting that job and not being seen as someone who holds an enviable position, and not being someone who has a W-2 of 6, 7, 8 figures per year. And so they're almost addicted to the lifestyle that's so clearly unhealthy for them and will probably limit their lifespan. But everybody around them is drinking the same Kool-Aid, so they just think that it's normal. And they probably think that those who buck that trend, who question it, who will prioritize their health over getting a promotion, they probably think something's wrong with them, honestly.
Most definitely. They most definitely think something's wrong with them, or they feel like he's an underachiever, doesn't want to, because they're only, and this is why I talk so much about metrics, because they're only viewing the success, and their identity is based around one metric. What do you do?
Yeah.
What do you do for a living when you meet somebody new is within the first 5 minutes of the conversation?
I know. And I've been trying to reposition that for what do you do for money? Just because I don't
even do that. I won't even ask people what they do. I refuse to ask people what they do for a living. I don't care. How you treat me is far more important than how you make money. It makes no difference to me if you're a millionaire or if you're a bum on the street. How you treat me and the values that you have for yourself and in the way that you see the world is far more important to me than the amount of money you make or where you work. And another thing too is people love leeching on to other people and saying they know so-and-so because and he's the guy, the CEO of Google, and he's this at this place. We love to grab on to say that we know these people, or to kind of raise our ranks and our social statuses, right?
Yes.
And it's just I saw that whole game, and I'm like, y'all are just envying other men, and I think it's gross if you ask me. It's
right. And I think the reason this works is, number one, it's a different strategy that people have for navigating their world. So, and I think everybody delves in this to some degree. This is not something that, some people just absolutely never do. I don't believe that people 0% of the time do this, but I do think that some people do it way more than others. And some people obviously do it way less than others, is name dropping. And if you grew up in a climate where simply knowing a very strong individual and being obedient to that person got you places, namely the people who grow up with stable family environments and stable schools, who are good students and can rise through that, factory type system. Knowing powerful individuals will make you seem to be more powerful to your peer group, because all if this person likes me, or you believe if this person likes me, this is going to open up some doors. But I think you realize, if you're an independent thinker who's actually tried to go your own way and do your own thing, that when you're doing your own thing, very few people are actually going to stick their hand out to help you when you need it. They'll stick their hand out to help you when you don't need it, when you've already had a lot of momentum, and when sticking your hand out to help is a very minimal effort on their end, and you're not actually asking for it. And so they feel more comfortable doing it. But for the most part, you can know really powerful people, you can know really influential people, but how helpful is it if they're not willing to help you in a situation where you need it? And then when you realize that, you have to go your own way, you have to forge your own path. And ultimately, you have to create value, because if you can't create value, there's nothing you can offer independent of, being subordinate to all of these other powerful people around you.
That's a great perspective. I think that, I think the idea of name dropping and saying people you work with is an advancement in your social status. I mean, people love to hear that I work with professional athletes, but that's usually the least favorite athletes I work with. And they're also less consistent because
really?
They have seasons, and they don't get to be with them during their seasons, and they have training protocols to do. And so they're not paying me all year long.
I see.
For you, some dude's living with his mom in Idaho who works for Google and makes $1 million a year can pay me every month, and I can see true results.
I don't make $1 million a year, in case Zach was subtweeting me with his words right there, but that's not me.
I found my demographic that I enjoy working with most. I enjoy the communication with most, who I feel like I'm actually making the biggest difference in their life. I've worked with athletes, for instance, working with Matt Overton, helped get that contract last year. It's just it was great. And it helped him because he got a big contract for it. And hell yeah, great. But it's the reward of what I receive, the fulfillment that I have, is I have far more with my middle-aged athletes and people that I'm working with, and guys like you who are trying to set a new deadlift PR, whatever that goal might look like. I love working with this level of athlete, and for the fact being is I can work with more people. If I'm working with a professional athlete, 2 or 3, I can't really work with, that's 7 or 8 other guys, because I'm working with 2 to 3 different coaches on communicating what's his stimulus like on these days, and how is he eating here. It's a constant check-in. It is just. I mean, my price goes up. My price is literally times 10. What I charge for my month for regular person and what I charge for an athlete is dramatically different, because the professional athlete requires me to communicate with 2 other coaches. It requires me to be constantly checking on his sleep, constantly checking on his stress levels, constantly checking on his recovery, and making sure that he has all of these things buttoned up. Because when he comes in, and if he's not buttoned up on his recovery, or if he does have an intense training session that I don't know about with somebody else, his performance is going to be down, and he's going to be more at risk for injury when he's with me. And I can't have an athlete more at risk of injury if he fucking uses his body for his profession to make his money.
Right.
So it's just when I work with a professional athlete and I do it right, the way you're supposed to do it, it doesn't matter the athlete. I understand lifting weights, I understand biomechanics. So it doesn't matter the athlete. I can make the athlete better, but it depends on what level the athlete's at, and to what level of, I would say, what level of commitment it's going to take on my end to make him to the next level.
Yeah. So, maybe you can expand upon this, because I know when we had dinner in Indy several months back, I was saying, Zach, why are you not charging more? You are very, very, very knowledgeable in this, to the point where many elite athletes would want to work with you and pay you hundreds of dollars per hour to train them. If I'm making $10 million a year, I don't see why I would look for a trainer whose rates were different than an attorney's, right? My body is the tool that's bringing me in 7 to 8 figures. So yeah, it's totally reasonable for me to pay an individual trainer, $50,000, $100,000 to get me in a position to perform. Why are you not upping your rates? Why are you not, 3Xing, 4Xing your rates? Because I think you could get that. And, you told me something pretty interesting back then. Maybe you could share with the audience, exactly why you price your services as you do, which I believe is below what the market would pay.
What did I tell you?
Well, you said you wanted to be able to work with more normal people. And that was what gave you joy. And that was what gave you satisfaction. And it was literally I am choosing to make less money in the short term, and maybe even do more hours of work per day, because working with this type of individual fulfills me more.
Boom. And that's really what and that's still, I was wondering if my answer was different last year than it is now, but that's still continues to maintain the same for my life. And I think a lot of it's ever since I basically came to Indy, it's kind of how I've really been focusing my life is based off what brings me fulfillment. The first year I opened the Iron Valley Barbell, it was hard because I was really hustling a lot. So I didn't have a lot of fulfillment the first year I opened IVB because I just had to kind of keep my head above water. But I like to work with so my vision's bigger. Okay. I used to have, and I know it sounds funny to a lot of people, but I talk about this to my guys. I used to have Zach Homol Power across all my social media handles and everything. And I was known for Zach Homol Power. Like I went to the Arnold Classic, Zach Homol Power. It's just like, it was like became my identity. Powerlifting, lifting heavy weights was becoming my identity. And I knew at that time that while I'm extremely passionate about lifting weights, and I'll never stop lifting weights, I'll never not strength train within some type of capacity, even from a show pony like you, Alex. I'm always going to make sure.
You got some work to do before you're going to be a show pony, Zach.
I don't know, bro. You're about to see. I'm just going to, you don't even know how lean I can get. You haven't even seen it yet.
I know how lean you can get for like 36 hours.
That's all that matters. Just enough for a photo shoot. So my mission's bigger. My mission's also, I believe where I put this actually on my social media, that where I see myself in the next decade. And when I actually got into lifting weights, when I got into the gym, it was never to own a gym, it was to help people. So my end goal is to help people. So to say that I only work with professional athletes says, well, I want to help professional athletes. Well, that's not actually what my vision is. That's not what my goal is. My goal is to help people, any people, all people, in any capacity that I can. Of course, I'm going to need paid for it still to be able to compensate for my time and my efforts. So I found a price point that makes sense for the type of people that I'm looking to invest most of myself into. And that's kind of where I came up with my pricing and my price points. And my pricing has raised, as you know that my price point has raised, and I will continue to raise them as the value that I'm able to continue to provide back. But where I see myself in the next decade and over this next year, as I start into it, is I did a little bit of speaking engagements at some high schools and at Purdue University for some classes. And so I have a little bit of speaking underneath my belt, but that's actually where I see myself being over the next decade, is doing far more speaking engagements, reaching out, have far greater outreach. But I'm trying to tie all this together back into fitness as well. What I'm trying to do is teach people that in order to become optimal, your human optimization, you hear that word all the time, but truly, in the true definition of the word, it's mind, body, and spirit. And these are all things that I don't just talk about, but these things that you can actually see that I'm doing in my life. You can see in these long format conversations of the podcast I'm doing. I can fake anybody on Twitter, but when I'm on I'm on podcast talking for 2 hours, a couple of times a week, you can actually get to see my character and see who I am and see where I place my identities. So these are my metrics of success and what brings me fulfillment. So my goal is to teach these strategies that I've developed over the years from experience. And a lot of mine is from the school of hard knocks. A lot of the things that I say and the one-liners that I come up with, they're not from a book. They're from experience. I tweeted this morning that the best self-development is life. Life itself is a self-development tool. And I just want to kind of take all this that I have and push this out to people to do in speaking engagements. And I want to be able to offer retreats. I'm currently working on a book right now. This is the first time I've talked about it on social media. Yeah. But I'm working on a book. So these are all things that I'm doing. And that's where I see my big picture. And I'll always train. I'll always be involved with lifting weights because it's my favorite thing to do. But I eventually would like for Iron Valley Barbell to be a free gym where people just show up and I'm just an old guy sitting in the corner and I'm actually just helping people when they walk in. I get the most fulfillment from just being at my gym and helping people. But right now I got to schedule time to get paid to help people. I'm excited for the time in my life that comes where I have enough passive income rolling, whether it's in through speaking engagements and through my biggest thing that I really want to do is leads to retreats. I want to spend 3 days to 7 days with people because I know I say this all the time. I just talked about it the other day. Whenever I talked about my last podcast, my character, the longer people are around me, they go closer to me or further from me. And if you see the people that's actually in my life right now, they all moved here from social media. Mm-hmm. Dylan, Jeremy, all of them, they're all from social media. And over the last 4 or 5 years, these guys have gotten closer and closer and closer to me. And it's goes to show that I'm leading these guys the way that they're looking to be led, but also it's a testament to my character. So my thing is I can And anybody can fake people on social media for a little while. You can't fake people forever. So I want to show people like, look, if you want to follow somebody and you want to get information from somebody, come to someone who's real, who's actually living this lifestyle. And let me show you by spending 7 days with you or 3 days with you on this retreat. And we're going to focus on working through my workshops and working through my book. And we're working on the self-development tools that I work on. We're setting our metrics of success and, being able to be in the dirt with people to bridge seasons, whether it's drug addicts and addiction, or whether it's people just trying to go from one tax bracket to the next, wherever it is. I feel like I do a great job at bridging gaps for people in seasons of their life. And the reason I charge the lesser amount of money that I charge is for my grand goal, which is this. So this all actually leading to what I really want to do. My coaching and everything, I'm very invested in it. I do a lot of tracking I do track a lot of results because I eventually plan on dropping a certificate. NASM and ASM, they have all this stuff going on, right? Which is cool, but all the fucking information is outdated and it's all bogus anyways.
Yeah.
Wrong.
I'm certified in wrong information right now.
Most people are. And I was like, I want to provide an actual tool that's going to scale your personal training. That's going to get you developed on social media so you don't have to work from a gym if you don't want to. I'm creating right now with the research that I'm doing a certificate that's going to be available. It's going to be one of the best certificates available in the next decade. But I'm collecting all of the information now. But if I was only working with professional athletes, I wouldn't be able to conduct the amount of research that I'm conducting now. So I look at things on such a much bigger scale than what they can, can see to meet the mind, that meets the eye. People that tell me, I can't believe you don't charge more or charge. I'm totally open with talking about my pricing, for my coaching one-on-one. It's $1,200 up front and it's for 4 months. It's for 3 months. So it's $400 a month. And what comes with that though is communication with me, video breakdowns that you see on social media, updates and changes to your programming, calls. There's so much stuff that gets involved. It's very detailed. We track your sleep, your stress levels, your fatigue levels, your nutrition, your hydration. We manipulate your programming to accordingly fit all of these other things, stimuluses that's happened in your life. So that's my highest level package. Then I have perfecting percentages, which is my second package, which is a call with me. It's a $500 package. It's 12 weeks of programming, over 150 videos, 150 pictures on how to do the exercise correctly, nutrition, exclusive podcast on nutrition. So my packages come, and I should sell them better, right? But my packages come with a ton of information packed into it because I want to receive the information back from the client, from the customer, and I want them to see results because my biggest goal is to have their certificate available. And it's to get them to buy into the message that I'm sharing so they can then be a part of my speaking engagements and be a part of my seminars and be a part of my retreats. I don't care to have 1 million followers. I want 1,000 good friends.
And that's so interesting because the way you just articulated that was very similar to how a lot of tech companies build their business model. And so people would say, well, Google, you're not charging people for maps. How are you making money off of it? And it's simply they get compensated through gathering data. Now, Zach isn't Google. He's not, he's not going to know everything that's in your Gmail account and your web search history, but simply being compensated in learning and feedback is compensation in and of itself. And, as we're talking about helping more people and spreading, your message, our message, from, a small group of individuals to many, you're dropping a deadlift workshop. Your deadlift is obviously, probably between that and your bench press, I would guess what gets you the most views on Twitter. You did over 700 pounds, if I'm correct in recalling, at 181 pounds. Your positioning tips are better than anybody I've seen on the internet, which is why we got in touch in the first place. So let's talk about that. Your deadlifting workshop. What are we trying to do with that? Who's the right audience? Who should look into it? How's it going to make them better?
Absolutely, dude. So I'm super excited about my deadlift workshop. All I did was I was looking, I'm like, okay, I look for problems and I try to solve them. People are going back to the gym. They're going to need good programming. I discussed a lot about programming the other day. When you go back into the gym, there's going to be good ways to reapproach your training, bad ways to reapproach your training, and efficient ways to reapproach your training. I've developed out strategies in my perfecting percentage methods. That's the most efficient way for you to reapproach your training and to be not only back to where you were in 12 weeks, but setting PRs to where you were in 12 weeks without your body being completely fatigued and beat up. So the first thing I'm going to pitch right here, why I have the mic, is going to be perfecting percentages. And then I saw the next problems is the deadlift. I review the deadlifts a lot. I have this service that I offer. It's a critique. So essentially, as you guys see that I mark up these videos and I explain what's going on, what's wrong, and then I give weakness development exercises that's going to correct. So I offer this package, and that package itself is $50, and it comes with 3 weeks of programming and an actual critique of your lift, explaining what's going wrong, why, and how to fix it. So I get a lot of deadlift videos in, far more than squat and far more than bench. I feel like I get probably 2 times the amount of deadlift than any other exercise. So I'm like, okay, people are struggling with their deadlift, and most people's back hurts when they deadlift. When people come to my seminar,
most people's backs hurt when they deadlift?
Yes. I would say 80% of the people who send me their videos, their back hurts when they deadlift.
Why are they still doing it?
I think it's to the point where they just want to deadlift. I don't think everyone understands the difference between aches and pains. So that could be a little bit of it too, like strains and pain. Strain and injury? Are you strained or are you injured? Mm-hmm. There's times where I deadlift and I'm like, I can't really move for like 5 or 6 days, like not well, but I'm also like 180 pounds and deadlift 610 times. Like, it's to be expected. There's when you stimulate your body certain ways to be expected. Where a lot of people, though, the reason why their back hurts is because they're constantly out of position. Mm-hmm. They're not distributing the load effectively throughout their body. So when you're deadlifting, the idea is to position our body in a way to utilize torque. Torque is the ability to effectively load as many muscle groups as possible for force output. So it's just like when you're deadlifting and your hips kick up and your shoulders go over top of the bar, the point of contact then goes into the lower back. So then you're straining on your lower back far more than your lower back hurts because you weren't actually utilizing your hamstrings, your glutes, or your upper back in the movement. You're utilizing.
And the reason they're not is because they're underdeveloped, right? I would imagine if they had a properly developed posterior chain, then that wouldn't be the default movement pattern.
Yes, that, or it's another thing to go down to is understanding pre-tension on the barbell. Mm-hmm. So making sure that a lot of people's hips kick up on the barbell because their body's kind of loose, and then they generate tightness, no tightness, rather they generate torque to pick up the bar before actually loading the effective muscle groups that need loaded prior to the pull. Mm-hmm. So it could be that their posterior chain is underdeveloped, or it could be because they're not pulling the slack out of the bar or pre-tensioning their body. So applying tension to their body before pulling. And so whenever the body grabs tension, so if you think about it, if you're pulling here, right, and you just stand up, if you're bending over and you just stand straight up, what's going to happen? Your hips are going to go back and your shoulders are going to come slightly forward. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times it's just because they're not tensioning the body prior to loading the body up prior to pulling.
Oh, really? So just giving people that one cue, it commonly fixes a lot of their positioning.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah. Just that one. Now, then what happens is, okay, I do this, and then they start pulling the barbell, and then you find more deficiencies. Okay, now that I pre-tension the barbell, and you're in the correct positioning, and you're in the pre-tension position. Now, as you begin to lift the weight, your left knee internally rotates. Mm-hmm. Well, why does it internally rotate? Well, if the left knee internally rotates, the hips kick back. The hips kick back again, but now you're in a twisted position.
Correct.
You see what I'm saying? So it's like there's a chain. So whenever I fix something, a new issue may present itself, and then I just fix that issue. And I say, hey, this is what's going on. You need to do some soft tissue release on that psoas. And your glutes, everyone's glutes are always firing. If your glutes wasn't firing, you fall over. But what happens is your body understands movement patterns, and you've been moving either in this internal rotation every time you deadlift year after year after year, and all of a sudden you're like, you don't know how to utilize your glutes. So I'm going to give you exercises that's going to teach you how to utilize the muscle groups are there by feeling the actual muscle group. A lot of people don't even feel their glutes when they're squatting or deadlifting. Well, it's because they never work the exercise isometric. They don't do it. They don't iso the exercise, right? They don't work directly just on that exercise. So we'll find that in, our warm-ups, strategize a more effective warm-up for them. That's going to get their body firing in the way that it's supposed to be firing, and get their mind to register how they're supposed to be pulling on a barbell and what's it supposed to feel like when you're actually pre-tension, and what muscle groups are supposed to be loaded. And then how does the movement pattern begin to change as I find these weaknesses. And as I find the weaknesses, we develop out the weaknesses and make sure that the athlete, though, as we're developing these weaknesses, that the main movement's not continually progressing. You don't need to, like you see in your programming, for 6 weeks, you were under 70%. But what we were doing is we were developing out weaknesses. So by the time we went over 70%, we started going into 80%, 85%, your body was able to handle the extra load in the positions that you were usually weaker in.
Right.
So I teach actually all of this in my deadlift workshop. I go everything from shoes to supportive gear, the history of gear lifting and why it's a thing and why you should or shouldn't do it. I talk about training and caloric surpluses and how to eat effectively for your training, your max effort deadlift or training your deadlift to be optimal. I go into positioning, and there's a big difference between positioning and form. Good form will keep you from not getting hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Good positioning will have you safe, optimal. Mm-hmm. And lifting the most weight possible. I talk about leverages and how the deadlift is a game of inches. 1 inch given here and 1 inch given here is going to result in, different load distributions and more weight being on muscle groups that don't need to be supporting the weight. I cover training methods and training styles and techniques, what a daily split should look like, and how you can actually build out your own deadlift program with inside of what I offer, because I explain breathing and bracing and rest periods. I go over multiple warm-ups, movement pattern awareness, so understanding that if your hips are doing this or your shoulders are doing this, mm-hmm. this is what it's supposed to be doing, but this is why it's also doing that. It comes with multiple videos. I assess positioning on the sumo and the conventional. I cover every common mistake that you see, and I go through weakness development programming. So basically what I do is say, okay, this is what's happening on your deadlift. You can say, oh, my deadlift does this. And because you see the video and you see the pictures that I provide, okay, this is what happens. And these are the supportive exercises that I need to be doing. You can build out your program right there. And this is going to be effective for any level. The guy who's afraid to deadlift is going to learn how to deadlift. The guy who wants to take his deadlift from 400 to 500. The guy whose lower back is hurting when he's deadlifting. The guy who thinks he knows how to deadlift because their coach taught him how to deadlift. The guy who's been stuck at 600-pound deadlift for the last 8 years and can't get over 600-pound deadlift and can't figure out why. This is for you.
And I think this is great. I've been lifting for 20 years, and I work with Zach to improve my form, simply because the way that I've come to look at the world, and I think the way Zach is coming to look at the world as well, is around momentum. So the better things get, the easier life is. The harder things get, the worse life is. And if you think about how the body works biomechanically, things tend to work when everything is working together. But when one thing gets thrown off, that makes it much more likely for a second thing to get thrown off, which makes it much more likely for a third thing to get thrown off. And when I think about my personal accomplishments from a fitness standpoint, I'm pretty happy with where I am right now. People always ask me, why are you, what do you want to do? Do you want to keep training? Like, you're not going to set any world records, but then you look great. So like, what exactly is it that you're trying to accomplish? And somebody asked me this on Twitter last night. And, one of the things that I really want to do is prolong the amount of time that I can stay in the gym, because I can't imagine at the age of 80, I will be training the way I do now, or 70 or 60, but I would like to continue prolong the amount of years that I can do close to what I'm doing. And that requires me understanding my biomechanical movements and how they might be inefficient. I have a couple surgeries under my belt, and what that has meant, particularly for my left shoulder, is that my left shoulder just doesn't move as well as my right shoulder. And, I didn't even realize how bad this was as I was lifting, because I had surgery like 14 years ago, right? And it didn't really hurt for many years afterwards. I could bench fine. I could bench press 225 pounds 15 times, fine. There's no issue doing pull-ups, no issues doing incline press with 110-pound dumbbells, fine. And then a couple of years ago, it started bothering me to the point where I got it checked out, and they basically said, I was having arthritic developments in there. I'm like, what? Like that doesn't make sense. But then as I started to understand how my body was moving, I realized that this limited mobility in my shoulder wasn't simply impacting my chest lifts or even my back lifts. It was impacting 100% of my lifts. It was impacting the way I would hold the bar on my back squats. It was impacting the way I would go about doing deadlifts. And what that was doing is it was causing repeated asymmetric movements, which over time would cause my spine to deviate in its position, which is essentially a functional scoliosis. And although I haven't had any issues develop from the functional scoliosis that you would probably diagnose me with if you saw an x-ray of my spine, what I have realized is that I need to correct this. I need to figure out a way to get my points of weakness back on track. Otherwise, this system is gonna be much more likely to teeter out of or spiral out of control, to where I not only have one essentially injury or one limited movement that I need to fix, that I have a second, a third, and a fourth that have all developed on the back of the first one. And so for anybody who's trying to figure out like, is now the right time for me to fix my deadlift? It's pretty good. I don't know. It's like the earlier, the better. You know, if you could start on day one, start on day one. And if you're on day 1,000, start on day 1,000 because you can't go back in time.
And then there should be never a lapse. There should be never a time that you take off of learning. Like if you go to the gym every day or you go to the gym 3 or 4 days a week and you randomly deadlift or you've been intrigued by the deadlift, learn how to deadlift first. Get the insight that you need. It's going to make it just a whole hell of a lot easier on you, and your results are going to amplify by 10. It's always funny. Lifting weights, we're so egotistical, especially like the lifter for whatever particular reason, right? Because it's a very self-righteous space to be in, that we just don't want to take information from other people. What I'm most proud of is what my guys say about me is whenever someone comes into the gym, I'm the most interested guy there. I am constantly asking questions, even to things I already know the answers to, because I'm just looking for new ways to say it or how you learned it and what do you know about it? Because all that's going to do is make me a better coach and make me a better athlete. Because at the end of the day, I want to be stronger. I want to lift more weights. I want to look better. So I want to learn what it takes in order to get me to that position. And hold that thought, hit pause if you can. I'm about to pee myself.
Definitely keeping that on the recording because everybody needs to know when Zach needs a bathroom break. I mean, if you're drinking a gallon of water a day, you know, let's be real. Like, you know, your performance is going to get better. Yeah. Like let's walk through Zach Homol's daily liquid consumption. We can leave off the adult beverages if you want, or you can include those too.
No, I'll go with everything. I don't like to lie to my people.
Okay. So like how many fluid ounces of water, coffee, beer, vodka sodas, Red Bull vodkas, what are we talking about here?
So what my mornings typically look like is if I drink a lot of people can wake up in the morning and drink a bottle of water real quick. It makes me sick, nauseous for whatever reason. So I wake up and what it usually looks like is I sip my coffee, I get coffee going and I start sipping, 3 or 4 cups, like a big ass cup, basically. That one I posted the other day with a messy bun, getting stuff done.
Oh yeah. I saw that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I drink that, in the morning, and that kind of gets me excited, gets my day going, sets my perspective. There's something beautiful to me about the morning, man. And drinking coffee, it's just like it's a new start to my day. And
particularly when the sun's out, right? I mean, at least for me.
Yeah. Well, getting started. I've been up usually each morning about 5:15. My sleep's been down, but my training's been down. So when I'm not, just let me talk about this for a second. So when I'm not training and like for something, like right now, I'm basically just training. I'm training for feats of strength right now. I go in my gym and I'm like, wonder how much I can pick up with one arm. And, I'm just doing stupid shit.
Is that safe? I know.
No.
No,
I mean, for anyone listening, it's probably not. But if you're me, yeah. But like I've been developing my body. Like I don't have weaknesses. I have weaknesses when I go to deadlift 700, right? 720. But like you can watch my best lifts are nothing. Like when I pulled 800 and slipped my disc, you know why I slipped my disc? Not because my positioning failed, but because I drank the night before and I didn't have enough water in me. And my body broke down.
I didn't know that. This is the first time I heard that.
Yeah, I don't got to brag about, I haven't really talked about it, but that's my, maybe I did actually discuss that before on a podcast, but
well, I knew you said your body wasn't ready for it because you hadn't really lifted for the 4 weeks prior or so because of your shoulder. Yeah, and so I'm sure both compounded it, right? Where
that and drinking, and my body just couldn't handle it. But like for me to do a 120 dumbbell over my head, like you see me doing on social media, or to do a Steinborn rock over squat with 225, or to deadlift 405 for a bunch, like this stuff is not, these type of feats of strength, while they might be dangerous for most people, like that's light for me. It's just not hard for my body. Like I benched 225 for 49 plus reps. It's not because
couldn't get that 50, huh?
No, I couldn't. It wasn't because I lacked it's not because 225 for 49 I wasn't able to do it 49 times because I haven't done a ton of endurance. It's because I have a lot of strength. 225 is just not heavy for me.
Well, you couldn't get it 50 times. I mean,
well, it got heavy after 40. Here's on a shock, people. I didn't breathe till rep 44.
So how do you do that? Because that's something that you and I are working together, for my personal lifts is I will reset with a breath after a heavy lift, like, because I feel like I have to, because I feel like I need oxygen to perform the lift. So how are you not passing out, by your, by second 12, essentially, of your movement? without
Okay,
breathing?
Two things. The first is understanding breathing techniques, the Valsalva maneuver, pushing air out. So releasing air as needed. But I'm not just breathing, letting all the air out. I'm pushing like I'm pooping. So I might push a little out and then suck back in, right? If need be. Typically, I just hold it the whole time, though. How I hold it the whole time is because I've practiced. I've practiced what it's like to train my body with that type of tightness and under that compression. So year after year of learning how to hold my air is how I can hold my air for as long as I can. So yeah, lots of practice and also understanding breathing techniques, understanding the Valsalva maneuver and what's like. I know when I breathe, I loosen up. You don't stay tight. And anyone who lifts maximum weight knows that. And that's why the whole breathing thing, exhale and however it goes, inhale on your way down, exhale on the way up. It's bogus. It's actually putting you more vulnerable for injury because you're not protecting your spine. You're not building that internal, you're not putting you're not filling your lungs, which then is going to help your transverse abdominal wall to brace against. You're only squeezing your abs down is not bracing. Mm-hmm. Right. Right. There's so much more. There's so much more to it. And it's harder to explain on a podcast. So I'll do it I explain in my video on my deadlift workshop.
Well, so what, even though this isn't the best medium for it, maybe like what actually happens when you let go of your breath to your spine? If say you have a few hundred pounds loaded on your back.
Well, you have no compression, right? Built against your lower lumbar from your internals, right? Mm-hmm. So therefore it's more, when you do that exhale and you breathe out, you loosen up. So the muscles that you're holding tightness against are relieving that tension. Mm-hmm. And then when you relieve that tension, obviously there's still weight on your back or there's still weight on your chest, whatever it is. So naturally there's going to be more strain being put on the joints that are supporting the lift rather than the muscles supporting the joints that are also supporting the lift. So that the lamest way to putting it is that when you exhale out, that you're leaving yourself more vulnerable to injury because you have no compression, nothing to push against. So ideally, like when I put 600 for 16, I didn't breathe till rep 14. It's just like, you got to learn how to hold your, like, well, what if I pass out? Like there's reasons why powerlifters and strength athletes pass out. Like that's why.
You're supposed to pass out.
Are you supposed to pass out? And like, no, obviously not. You're supposed to learn how to breathe effectively with the Valsalva maneuver. You're supposed to know exactly at what second do I got to make sure I let this air out so I don't fucking explode. And that's when you let it out, at that exact second. You do the Valsalva maneuver. You push it out. You don't just,
Have you ever passed out lifting?
Oh, yeah.
How many times?
A few times a year.
Seriously?
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, but also like, I'm not like, but it's another thing. It's like, remember that I'm not like everybody. I'm one of the strongest human beings in the world under 200 pounds. And like bragging or egotistical speaking, it's just like most guys just don't lift 720 pound squats at 180 pounds. Most guys don't deadlift 700 pounds at weighing 180 and bench press 465 or bench 315 for 20. Most people don't do the things or deadlift cars and all the other shit that I do in strongman. So most people aren't doing the things I'm doing. So they're not pushing their body to the level I'm pushing my body. It's like I'm training my body like a professional athlete would if they were, in their given sport.
And crazy. So you're telling me you've probably passed out over 25 times lifting if you're doing it.
I would say probably 15 or 20. Yeah. I would say that at least over a dozen times. I've done, just this last year, I think I passed out 2 or 3 times.
So that's crazy. So I for our listening audience, I've been lifting for almost 20 years. I have never passed out lifting weights.
That's awesome.
I felt lightheaded certainly a couple times after deadlifts.
I feel lightheaded every training session.
Okay. So, and to the point where as I get older and probably get, a little bit more risk averse, I basically think that my brain happens to work reasonably well and I'm able to make money because my brain works reasonably well, but I also know that this is fragile. And so any accident, if I hit my head the wrong way, all of a sudden the ease at which I can make income will be taken from me. And that will drastically change the course of my life. And so when I think about different things I want to get better at, but also different areas of vulnerability, like brain injuries or vulnerabilities. So I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm ever likely to pass out. People ask me a lot about fasting. Do you intermittent fast? Do you ever do fasts? And I will say, I don't really do that much fasting. The first time I ever fasted for any amount of time intentionally, I did 60 hours. And the reason I did not do 72 hours as I had set out to do before I started, it was not because I couldn't complete it. It was because I was getting lightheaded to the point where I thought there was a very meaningful chance that I would pass out while I was standing at some point in the following 12 hours. And I didn't know what my head would hit if that happened. So I just decided that it wasn't really that meaningful for me to complete those 12 hours. I'd rather not put my head in jeopardy. So like, are you concerned about hitting your head on an iron plate? You know, I guess this can even be mitigated. You could have a lifting helmet if you wanted to, because it doesn't add a ton of extra weight.
Yeah,
you know, maybe
I don't pass out. I don't pass out nearly as much now as I used to. Like last year, I think I passed out once or twice, and usually I can stop myself right before like I go out, but I'm still like relatively there.
Oh, you can redirect your course, so you're like
sometimes
falling in a safe place.
There's been multiple times that I couldn't, because there's been times where I've hit my head. I've passed out more in my earlier in my training career when I was like 19, 20, and I was fucking taking in ridiculous. It's always parallel with this, the amount of caffeine that I would take in and the lifestyle I was choosing to live. Like, let's also not forget, guys, that I was a Coke head. I did Adderall almost every single day on top of my Coke, and I took pre-workout, and I drank a pot of coffee in the coal mines. Like, I'm different. Like, so we need heart.
This is going to be the intro clip for our podcast for this one.
So I'm setting this context. It's just like, these are not things I'm proud about or saying, but also like you got to recognize that the times that I did pass, like I have a video or a picture on my social media from like 2015 maybe or 16. I think it was 16, and my eyes were bloodshot. You couldn't see anything. I blocked every blood vessel in my eyeballs and my face. And it was like, oh man, because I was lifting heavy, right? And I was I was really just fucking all coked up at the Chicago Fit Expo, blowing a bunch of coke and squatting heavy weights. And that's what led it to happen. So it's just like, the lifestyle that I chose to live also led to a lot of the things that happened. Of course not. I wasn't thinking about none of these things, or there's repercussions. I was thinking that this guy, I was building my legacy at the time. That's all that mattered to me. And if there's no one in my life like you right now who's like, dude, what if you hit your head? Nobody fucking told me that then. I didn't have one person.
You wouldn't have listened. You wouldn't listen to them anyway. You're like, dude, I got rocks flying over my head.
On top of that, I've been knocked out in boxing a couple of times. Like, I'm not worried about. Well, of course I've been. And it's never an actual fight.
Even in amateur boxing, because amateur boxers wear the headgear.
The headgear has actually been shown to be worse for the brain.
CTE, because it's repetitive injury, but not from a single blow standpoint, right? Over time, it's probably worse for the brain, but on a single bout, you're less likely to get knocked out with it, right?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Yeah, mine was mostly in sparring that I've got knocked out though, because I always spar with people who are like, I got the opportunity to spar this guy. Google him, guys. His name is Quan Kimbrough.
Probably weighs like 240 pounds or something.
No, he was actually 135. He was like number 8 in the world at the time. He had a couple of titles and shit, but he was real good. And he, everyone knows Roy Jones Jr. Well, he used to fight out of California, PA, which is about 45 minutes from my house. So my buddy had connections with him. He's like, dude, we can go up and spar Quan Kimbrough, which was a legend basically around us, like, oh, this guy's fucking so good. He's super high level. So, I went up there and got my ass handed to me, and not only by him, but by multiple guys. Cause I got thrown into circuits with people who I just shouldn't have been in the ring with, but it taught me how to be a better fighter for my amateur bouts, which thankfully I never had got knocked out in. But yeah, as far as the whole passing out thing goes or whatever, it's like, this is not something that I promote or whatever, but a lot of it is because of the lifestyle that I lived. Like for instance, on my watch, I've had maybe 2 guys pass out on me. One's Dylan Spiney, passed out on just a log by itself, empty. His knees locked hard and just went out like a choir guy, And I'm real big on like.
So did the log fall on him?
Oh, he got all fucked up. But he's tougher than fuck, so it don't matter. You know what I mean? It's like, that's also like when you train with me, like my actual crew, these motherfuckers, they don't give a fuck. They're willing to die under the bar. Like, that's another thing. Like, our mindset is not like, oh, we're doing this to be healthy and to get in good shape. Like, I fucking hurt a lot,
right? Because
I trained to be the best. Like, to be the best, there's repercussions that come from pushing your body and the human body to the level that which we choose to push it. But it's also based around our goals. I don't train my guys online the way I train myself. Now, a couple of them, because they're fucking nuts and they want to see the same things. And if I have guys who want to be all-time great powerlifters or strength athletes, you bet your fucking ass. Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, here we go. Everything, it's, whatever it takes. Now, like my general health seekers who, like you, for instance, and other general health seekers I have, like, hey, take a deload a week, or hey, do this. It's like, I'm watching.
I'm deloading because I'm a general health seeker.
I don't want you to get hurt.
If I was training for like a strongman, would I have deloaded last week?
Yeah.
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 Because I got to help her, got to boost my recovery. My body
Yeah, but
happens
if
to work.
if you were training for strongman, you wouldn't make it through the second event. You would be shot. You have no work capacity. You're fragile. You can't handle 5
Am I talking to
events
Mike Tyson right now?
at max effort weights.
I feel like we're in like a boxing promoter. We're just
What
in
are
the
you
shit
talking about?
talking.
I'm not even shit talking. I'm just saying, like, in order, like, don't be ignorant to think that you strongman competition. You are so ridiculous to think that your work capacity when you do 3 exercises a training session is going to be enough to be able to do 5 max effort lifts, an Atlas stone, lift a car, carry 600 pounds for 60 feet, deadlift 550 pounds for at least 8 reps to even place yourself on the board. Overhead
I couldn't do any of that. All right. Obviously,
270 pound
how come you guys can't run? All of that stuff is harder than running.
Talking about. You know why? We ain't got nothing to run from. We ain't running from nobody. That's why I done told you. We're staying our ground. I got nothing to run from. If I gotta, what's always cracked up about you? If you could run a 6-minute, 30-second mile. Listen, if I gotta run 6 minutes and 30 fucking seconds from somebody, they deserve to kill me. They deserve to kick my ass. I ain't running that far from somebody. I get away from. I give me a quick 50-foot sprint and turn around and be like, all right, I'm ready now. Talking about.
Have you ever run away from a fight?
Absolutely not.
All entire life.
Beat up? No, I've never ran away from a fight. Absolutely not. My dad would have fucking killed me.
Really?
My dad made me fight a neighbor kid. This is my dad. I'm not joking. One of the last time my dad's and I talked, we haven't talked in like 3 or 4 years. One of the last conversations he said to me, I was most proud of you the day you came on the bus and this kid named Ken Durbin beat me up on the bus. He's big. Like he failed a grade and it was like 3rd grade or something. He was bigger than me. He should be like in 5th grade or something. This kid whooped my ass on the bus. And we're like friends, but this was kind of normal, I guess,
right,
for just kids or whatever. And I go home and my dad's like, what happened? My face is all red and shit. I'm crying. I'm like, Ken Durbin, pick me up, And he's like, well, you fuck it. My dad's so mad at this point. He's drunk. He's probably fucking been drinking all day. He calls Ken Durbin. He lives with his grandma. Told Kenny to come up. And my dad told her that what happened. And she's like, yeah, I'll send Kenny up. Me and Ken Durbin got enough.
Wait, the grandma was literally like the boxing fixer. It was like, yeah, you need.
No, she just said it was fine.
But she was okay with it, right?
Yeah, she was fine with it, and sent Ken Durbin up. And dude, and my dad said he's most proud of me because I beat up Ken Durbin. That's what my dad said. He's most happy for. I said, thanks, man.
Wait, he said this like you're 25 years old. You'd started your own gym in the most
23 maybe. Yeah, I remember I met Arnold Schwarzenegger, and my dad goes, "Oh, cool. What? He's going to be the next Terminator?" Like he's a loser. You know what I mean?
This is hilarious. This is hilarious. So you've literally like broken 181 powerlifting records. You probably started your own business at the time.
Yes.
Made 6 figures in whatever previous jobs you've had.
The house at age 19, at age 20, I bought a $160,000 house with a new car, pool, in-ground pool, everything.
And he's most proud of you for beating up a bigger kid when you were 8 years old.
Literally, it was one of the first conversations he had with my wife.
That's amazing.
We talked about it at dinner. It was like, it gets brought up every Christmas that I was involved in. He just talked about it. You know what I mean? That kind of like set the tone, I guess.
We need to get Ashley on here to give a preview of what she felt like when she was first exposed to this. You probably prepped her for it, so she probably took it in stride. It's like
Ash thinks my dad's a total piece of shit, so she just wouldn't want to talk to him. I can talk about a lot lighthearted because I'm just so when someone is negatively affecting you, like a father figure, mother, like it's easier to deal with them. Like we don't have a relationship, my dad and I. We haven't in years. And but it's easier for me to accept like the stupid shit that he says and did, I guess, because he's related to me or whatever that might look like. I'm more susceptible or understanding to whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. Or Ash just like I don't even refer to him as actually as my dad. I refer to him as Paul, his legal name, because he's not known in our house as a father figure because my mom raised me.
You got to earn that. You got to earn that title.
Right? Yeah, that's a stripe you got to earn for sure. But yeah, man, going full circle though on the whole passing out thing, it's not something too that I promote. Like I talked about puking one time. Everyone's like, "Oh, it's not a good workout if you puke." Like, what are you fucking telling people to do? So I'm like, no, listen, you're just a bunch of fucking sissies, and you realize that sometimes you gotta see what your fucking body is actually capable of. And that's the thing too that I think we forget how durable this fucking thing is, dude. It's strong. We have a You see this guy who does 405 with his massive rounded back, but every week keeps coming doing it, and he's not hurt. But like, oh, you're gonna hurt yourself. Will you hurt yourself? Yeah, eventually. But if your back's slightly rounded, like when your back's slightly rounded on your deadlift, that wasn't all that concerned about you getting hurt. Is this optimal? No, we gotta fix that. But your form is fine. Neutral is a range. You're gonna be okay. It's just where are you breaking and making sure that we develop at that weakness. I'm not worried about you actually getting hurt though. The body is durable. Most bodies are very strong and can withstand that type of blunt force that we put on it, but we're fragile. Y'all motherfuckers are fragile because you watch Netflix all day and you allow your minds to think that you're going to get hurt and you believe those thoughts and it just spirals downhill.
So for people who are listening, I think both Zach and I are classifiably insane in many ways, but also like very sane in other ways. So it's like a nice balance. For anybody wondering, I have not thrown up in any sort of training activity at least since college. I think when in high school, there were a couple times where I may have, but it was purely due to food consumption, like immediately prior to doing that training session. It was not from the actual training.
I bet you 90% of the time, 95% of the time is because of that with me too. It's I ate Chipotle an hour before. You know, it's never just, I mean, but my workout's still fucking hard, but it's also me saying, hey, I ate this food and I don't care. I'm still busting my ass. And there's other times I've gone to the gym. I remember one time I went to the gym and I set my legacy in town. It's funny. I had a kid tell me that he heard about me at the local gym. And this is the story he told me. He goes, I heard there was a story that a guy had a car and you pushed his car around town until you puked. I said, it's true.
How old are you? Tell me about this.
It's like 18 years old, maybe 17, 18 years old.
Did Graybeard make you do it?
No, but Graybeard was always a part of all this shit. Graybeard's always been a part of this
behind
stuff.
the scenes. Yeah.
No, I mean, he was the instigator. I mean, well, Graybeard ripped his bicep off because he was trying to beat CT Fletcher's curl record at the time. And that's another thing too. Like Graybeard taught mentality. Joel taught us, that's my training mentor, he spent 6 years of his adult life in prison. So he had this mentality of like in town, people feared him. So they respected him. So with that being said, I wanted that for myself. Like I wanted people to respect me, and that must mean the only way to get that is if they fear me. So I do fucking absurd, crazy, hard things. So these people, what I was doing at that time, to respect me because they were afraid of me. So I would do extremely hard, like a push in the car. It had nothing to do with fucking even getting a good workout in that day. I didn't even know. All I remember is I pushed this thing block after block after block after block until I fucking just couldn't push no more and just started like hyperventilating, puking on myself to total and utter fatigue. A decade plus later, still being talked about the local gym.
So it's interesting because, you know, I played baseball at Vanderbilt, and you know, when I left, I think I was number 7 on the all-time hits list. I don't know where I am right now, presumably still maybe top 10, though we've had a lot of good players after that, so maybe not. But anyway, I played for 4 years. I started maybe 200 games, and the only thing that people talk about, or the first thing that people talk about when I go back, is when I broke my jaw in my senior year, when I was facing a guy who actually went to school with Zach's wife, a guy named Lance Lynn. And it's like,
what a small world we found that.
Yeah. And it's like, guys, I've actually like done other things besides this, but people just want to, they want to remember you by this, you know, crazy feat of strength demonstration or toughness. And so what's really interesting to me, Zach, is the way that you tried to achieve social credibility when you were younger, you know, seems very similar to, you know, what many people go through with working class backgrounds. But then the transition that you've made, and I don't know when this point started. I don't know if it was when you met Ashley, if it was kind of like a little bit after, like when you started going to church with Ashley, if it was maybe a little bit before. But at some point, it seems that there's been, if not a switch, at least a strong supplementation in terms of you getting pleasure out of helping other people. And so, you know, how did that even come up? Because I think as an individual, when you want to be feared by other people, it's almost like you look at other people as threats, that you want to subordinate these threats to you. But then at some point, if you're trying to, yeah, and that's very much trying to move people away from you and fear me, you know, respect me, fear me. And it does take a little bit of a perspective shift to say, actually, you know, I'm going to go from focusing on making people scared of me to drawing people to me. You know,
that's interesting. And I don't know if there was a specific time, because I've always also possessed this. I've always been generally likable. You either really like my personality or you really don't like my personality. But for the most part, I feel like I've always done a good job with the law of attraction. That's been very natural to me, that people are attracted to me. Now, there's this song, it's a ludicrous song, it's Growing Pains. It's like, my shoes got muddy and my clique turned cruddy. Wherever I went, they went. They're my buddies. And that verse stuck real heavily with me because whatever it seemed that I was into, everybody else was into. So when I was doing drugs, everybody was seemed like they were doing drugs. And maybe because it was just the crowd I was working around with, or it was the culture and environment that I was in. But I just recognized that I have this natural ability to get people to believe in the things that I'm saying. Mm-hmm. And I've actually, though, there's this also like a part of me, even when I wanted people to quote unquote fear me, I was a very lovable guy. I love, I'm always happy-go-lucky. Like, it's even when I was at my rageous moments, like I was more just anger driven. Like I'd be angry, I'd be a switch step flip. But usually, I mean, all throughout school, even, teachers, friends, family, I got along pretty well with the other kids' parents and shit too. I was relatively likable. I just was ornery, I guess you could say. But I would say mostly why I started actually changing how I act though, and what I started to actually recognize is probably around 22, right before I moved to come to Indiana. I had a guy in the coal mine say, "You're like a prophet. Every time you talk, people just start walking around." Like, I'd be in the coal mine and I'd just be riffing on some shit like this, mm-hmm. like motivation, and like I'd go into work too and just motivate the guys, like, cause they're all tired. They don't want to go in, and I'd go in, I'd be like, "Fuck these motherfuckers making us fucking go down there again." But cause I'd wake them up like, "Yeah, fuck them," But then I'd be like, "Dude, we're about to fucking run more coal than any of these motherfuckers. Get that motherfucking pizza party Friday, boys. Then we're going to get drunk. Let's go."
Let's talk about these incentives that the coal company gave you to dig more coal. You got pizza parties if you beat the other group. Is that the deal?
Yeah. We'd have so basically whoever ran the most coal, whatever shift ran the most coal, would get a pizza party on Friday.
Yeah. So you produce an extra $100,000 for them, and they spend like $400 giving you guys like pizza.
Not only that, I risked I love getting coal performance bonuses, because I like competing. Yeah. And it was just a cool thing for me to do. But I literally risked everyone's life, the whole 300 people, 400 people that I was working in the coal mine, risked their lives by not checking my methane gas and by turning equipment off. So it just to run more coal. I was a total outlaw, in every sense of the word, in coal.
Wait, let's talk about this in greater detail, because this is scary. So, and I know
it's
nothing about this.
You don't know nothing about it. It's probably
I know nothing about this, and neither do our listening audience. But you're basically blowing through safety protocols as a coal miner, so you can generate more coal, so you can beat the other groups and get a pizza party with beer on Friday night.
From the outside in, yeah. But really, it was just because I wanted to run.
Nationalize this for everybody.
But that's it. But basically, because I just wanted to run more coal than everybody else. So I was a young guy on the crew, and I was running the coal miner, the actual miner at the time, which is a very important job and the hardest piece of equipment to run in the coal mine. Right. When I was running that, of course, I was trying to get the pizza parties because I want to make a name for myself. But listen, it sounds crazy, but also there would be a fall in the coal mine where the belt line would cave in. Yeah. And I would go in, and so everything stops if the belt line's down. So basically all the shifts go there, and you fucking work on repairing the belt, and you have to go under unsupported roof to resupport it with fucking.
Oh, and that could crash at any point, right?
At any point with literally you put up post. You just hammer post up in there. You put big ass timbers and you wedge them in, and then you clean it all up.
That'll hold up 1,000 pounds.
Exactly, right? It's nothing about coal mining is all that safe to begin with. But in those moments, I was always in shape, and I always like to work hard. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. I want to be the best at it, and it's just kind of my mentality, and I'm going to work real hard to get there. So when the mine would cave in a certain spot, it would happen, every month or two, or even more, maybe at least once a month. I would stay as long as it took to get the place back running. I'd work sometimes 26 hours in a row. The bosses would be like, "You got to leave. You're not even allowed to be here." And they'd physically make me leave. But I just always wanted to showcase that I'm fucking here. And I know that and the union guys call me a kiss ass and shit, but they never recognized that after that, the next 3 weeks, I was sleeping in the belt line because I got special privileges. You know what I mean? I always got special privileges for working extra hard. And they saw that I'd always be willing to do things that weren't OSHA. Well, this is called MSHA, which is Mine Safety and Health, Operations, whatever the hell it is. So anyways, I would, they knew that I would always I'd bend the rules. I do things that weren't necessarily legal. Like I'd go under unsupported top that could cave in on me in any second in order to get the job done. And I would wade through fucking water that was up to my nipples to get to a sup pump to return the pump back on that had shut off. And I was always willing to go the extra route, which also put me in a much better position though in my career in coal mining. And honestly, before I left coal mining, I had a fucking kosher job. It was super easy. I just worked too many days a week. That was all it was. But I had hustled my ass off for 2 years. And by the time I was done on year 3, I was basically just coasting. And I could have went out throughout my entire career just coasting. I was offered a bossing position in the coal mine with one of the younger guys to get their bossing papers if I would have did it. And I decided I didn't want to do that though. But that was, yeah.
And so you're crazy, but you don't need to hear that from me. And that's really interesting because it shows to you, and I'm sure it wasn't the first time, the benefits of winning, right? Because as young kids, we just wanted to win and we didn't really know why. We just wanted to win. And what ended up happening for me as I got older is I noticed that the more winning I did, the more I didn't have to do the same things that the people who lost did have to do. And as the game I played became more and more competitive, and my schedule became filled tighter and tighter, I came to be of the opinion that I can't actually be successful if I have to do all of the things that are expected out of everybody else. So I have 2 choices. I can either try to win, at which point, if I win, I don't have to do the things that everybody else has to do, or I can try to do all the things that everybody else has to do, but then I can't win because I'm not putting enough effort on the things that actually matter. And I think a lot of people who haven't experienced extreme success in anything don't realize that when you win, there's like a 10x benefit to winning. And it means you don't have to do as much work as everybody else, right? If you've established with your boss that you're a star employee, your boss isn't going to check in on you every hour of the day. They'll just be like, yeah, tell me what you're doing. I'll worry about the people who aren't like you. But if you've never been in that position where you get special privilege, you don't know that this is something that you can actually work for and accomplish.
Man, I totally agree. And for me, it was never really so much for the reward. I did recognize that because, for instance, I recognized that early on. I used to hike shingles up a roof with my dad. Every summer I'd work with roofing, and I just was a shingle hauler. I'd carry shingles up the roof and back down, and clean up and all I realized was if I worked harder and got all the shingles up there as fast, tore the roof off, cleaned up as fast as I could, get all the shingles up there as fast as I could, my job was easy. The last 4 hours while they were working harder, I was chilling. And I just recognized that. So I did realize that. But for me, I was real big on legacy. Like I wanted fucking people to remember me for being like, I don't want to fit the crowd. Like I like the idea that people think I'm a little crazy. I've literally conducted the majority of my life. Like if I was going to be a cokehead, I'm blowing the most 8-ball that day. If I'm going to drink beer, I'm bonging the beers the fastest. If I'm going to lift weights, I'm the strongest. If I'm going to run coal, I'm running the most coal. It didn't matter. When I'm running the gym, Iron Valley Barbell, we're a global brand. We're fucking opened the gym up with $732 in my bank account, and I've served people in over 24 countries. I was just on a phone the other day with a dude from Nigeria. It's just like whatever I do, I just want to excel in it because there's no sense in being mediocre in anything. There's no fun in being mediocre. And I like the idea of leaving legacies. And I like the idea of whenever the urban legends. And I said, there's always this urban tale of the guy who can bench 500 pounds in a hometown. Like, oh, that's that dude who benched 500. Like, and I knew that. I heard people talking about that. And I'm like, I want to fucking be that. I want to be that urban legend that people tell. Like, oh, yo, fucking Homol, this motherfucker, he did this. And in the coal mines, I get DMs from guys all the time. Like, bro, I remember that one time you did this. I couldn't believe it. You're fucking nuts. And it's just like, I loved that. I loved hearing about the things that I did and that people continue to talk about and kind of keep me in their mind when they think about certain things. When they think about coal mining, when guys are thinking about coal mining and reminiscing and they're DMing me and I ain't seen them in 5 years, that's like one of the coolest things for me.
That's awesome. And I think as we are bumping up on, I think near 100 minutes of this, that's a great item to talk about on episode 5, legacies. What do you think?
Legacy. I love that, bro. That's a great idea. I think the podcast got to see kind of a different side of me today, a little bit of my past and a little bit more of another layer of my personality. I tell people I'm very much like Shrek. I'm an onion. There's a lot to me. There's a whole lot of sides to me, and I'm excited to continue to share sides of my personality with you guys on the podcast and share stories about will say, you know, coal mining and my upbringing and my experiences, but also take these things for what they're worth. These are not things necessarily that I'm promoting. I'm not promoting for you to be unhealthy and to do drugs and all these different things. But you know, this is the way that I live my life that led me into the position that I am in today. Someone who doesn't do cocaine and who doesn't, you know what I mean? And while I am far more safer now, I would even expect myself to be, I'm not nearly as reckless. As Ashley talks about this all the time. She's like, I'm glad I ain't got to worry about you dying all the time. For instance, I never wore
just some of the time.
Yeah, some of the time. Like I never wore my seatbelt before. I flipped out of the sunroof once and a deer came through my windshield at 80 miles an hour once. Neither time did I have a seatbelt on. So you know what I said? God's not going to, I have faith, right? A big faith. I said, God's not going to kill me in a car crash or he would have done did it. So I stopped wearing a seatbelt. Never wore one, ever. Never wore one. And Ash, you know, her and Crew finally talked me into it. So now I'm wearing a seatbelt. I feel more at risk. But
they guilted you, huh? Crew was the one who ultimately pushed you past the line.
He did. He got a little like OCD about it. He was always stressed, like thinking that. And I'm like, listen, Crew, I said, one day you're going to get, I'm hard to fucking kill. He don't get it yet, though.
Everybody, one lesson from today, Zach Homol's hard to kill. Tune in next time. Thanks, folks.
Thanks. Peace.